So the last video we were talking about the lock structure, so the visual lock files, the lock sequence number, and all the lock commit tag. So we are going to continue with transaction logs and we see how this goes. Now we are going to be looking at a SQL Server Management Studio code, SQL code, where we are going to see the components of the code and then we are going to take care of that code. Now for the code, this is the initial and also an important part. This code is just a system function syntax. So you run this code. What you want this code is to see the available VF files that are the visual log files that are available. To see if the files have already been overwritten or to see how many of the files have been used that we are actually going to be investigating. So that's what this, or to see if the transaction log was not even initiated in the first place. So we are going to be interrogating to see how many of these files were used. Now step 2, we are actually doing the select. We're actually selecting what we have been talking about, all these 7 operations, all these we are going to be selecting them. We are going to be looking for them here. So we do the LSN operation, getting the transaction name, the begin time when the transaction ID, the username, the old value, the row log content 0, and the new value, the row log content 1. And then we run now this function. This is function database log. So what it does, it actually returns this information. Since the information in the transaction log is stored in hex, that's 16 please, in hex which is 16, conversion is 16, that's 0 to 9 and 10 to 15, that's A to F. So when it is stored in hexadecimal. So what happens is that this function database block is going to convert it in a user readable way, in a way you can actually understand. So the null just means it should bring the data from the start point to the end point, the 2 extremes. It should begin from the first extreme to the last extreme. That's just the function of this one. These are just the operations. Now this one, the function of this one, for example, let me say a company has been there for 10 years. You don't want massive old data, so this one will just bring the current data that you need, the current data for a specific time. Let me say you say 10, 24, 34 seconds, for example. It's going to bring that exact time. You can take 1 second from the incident. Any you can track the data depending. Using this one, you can actually sort the data that you want. Now if you update the table, you run it in settle, for example, you update the table, you delete the table. Now there's no value in the table. Now you run this function, you're going to actually see that the transaction was actively recording those things, all these values that we are doing. Transaction loss is an inbuilt function, so every database, every system is with it. Now the take home is our tables, the values on the table, the values that on the table can be wrong. For example, the value here you are seeing 0, but the logs is going to show you the actual value. The value can be faulty, but the logs don't lie. The logs are going to show the table lie, but the logs specify. They show you the old value and they show you the new value, what was before the new value. Now deletion is not deletion, it's simply relocation. We're talking about pages, how database stores information. So what it does, the information in the array is stored in the array. So what you see in the page is stored in the pages, and it's having arrays. So what happens is that those pages are generally 8 kilobytes. You see in the second name, we cover that in the second name. The pointer that is pointed to that specific array set just shifts the pointer to the next empty space, showing that section as a free space that the data can be overwritten. But the data is still the array can still extrapolate as long as the data in that space has not been used. So every crime starts with begin, execution, and commit, saving that I'm actually doing this. Now bulk operations, mass like the truncate page, like the mass deletion tools that most of those guys use. And now speed bit skills, because VF files are always in reuse. Look at it like a tape, for example. As you use this one, it's like this. This is how it is. So it is circular. As you're using this one, you use this. You have to free this one. If you don't free, it's going to come and now. Once that's come, it's going to come and right. So you have to do general backups. You do backups and you extrapolate the data quickly so that that space is not overwritten, because the system has been programmed like that to reuse those space. Now, absence of evidence is evidence. That's all for this. And now we're going to come back to update. Update is the one that those insiders actually very use, because it is very very difficult to spot this one. It doesn't need any structural noise, it just goes to a specific data set, it updates and it updates. So this one is actually difficult to trace, because it will never give any noise to the system that will notify. It's just like a regular transaction. So you have to check log by log space to check actually what actually happened to it for an update function. Now, did it remove rows, for example? You just remove row from the table. Let me see the person does 10 deletes, 20 deletes from the transaction, or you can quickly spot delete. You can quickly spot delete because it's going to show all the logs that is deleted. Now, you can just empty the table. See it as a gun. You just shoot, you destroy the table. So it makes some noise that you can actually trace and hear that there was a gunshot. So you can easily trace this one because it's actually a structural disturbance. Now, draw function is more of like an object-related destruction. It just destroys the table. It destroys everything about the table, even from the from the command drop dot, like you're just destroying everything. See it as a bomb. A bomb is very small. See it as a nuclear weapon, like you're launching a nuclear weapon. That's when you're doing with drop. You're just like, okay, I'm ending this section. No survival. So, but it is very, very, very low structural destruction, but it gives detection. Because if you do this kind of job function, the system is going to detect. If you do for massive tables, for many tables, the system is going to actually detect and tell us that there was actually a problem, or it's going to create an alert that those data can actually be traced. But it's very tricky to trace this one, because you have to like trace back the data from the metadata. You have to trace like from those small points, unlike the other ones that they are going to be very easy to recover. This one takes a lot of time to trace it from the small components that are remaining. It had to be all for the introduction to transaction logs with Madame Ihulia, Miss Ihulia. So this is introduction to transaction log. And that was all about transaction logs. So LEFIs, system immune, hexadecimal, simple model, full model, log model, DFIs, LSN, operation command, transaction ID is FN, function database logs, the info log, and all the other logs. They're very, very important. You should understand it. I think tomorrow we are going to function on combinations, because actually do the data from the transaction log, it keeps data in hexadecimal. So you're going to do correlations tomorrow. You're going to see binary, octal, decimal, and hexa, probably once complement to something like that. Probably the following